truth about winning a hackathon is it's not just about the code you write. It's not about creating the perfect project. It's not even about creating the perfect presentation. Over the years, I've participated in hackathons, won them, judged them, and also given away almost $1 million to people who've come to the hackathons that we've hosted. It's not about the computer that you have. It's not about a lot of things that you might expect. And in today's video, I'm going to show you my 5 essential tips if you want to win a hackathon. And let's start with tip number 1. Tip number 1 is what I like to call the Lockbox Method. The reason it's called the Lockbox Method is because I named it after a team who used it to win 3 hackathons in a row. They were Harvard undergrads and they dropped out, got funded by A16Z, which is one of the biggest venture capital firms in the world. And their startup is now worth millions of dollars just a couple of months after they started it at the hackathon. So let me break it down. The Lockbox Method is to understand what a hackathon is. A hackathon is not about creating the perfect project all at once.
I'm not perfect. We're not all perfect.
It's not about creating a fully functioning app with all the bells and whistles. It is not about perfection. What it's about is experimenting with a new idea.
Oh, I've got a great idea.
And figuring out what exactly you want to get out of a hackathon. And for many, it's actually about launching a new idea. It's about experimenting and it's about getting feedback from the judges. Remember that at a hackathon, at the end of it, you're going to have to present your project to the judges. And so this is an essential part. You need to network with the judges. You need to build a relationship with them and figure out what they're excited about. And this will not come as any surprise to people who have been going for job interviews where you go to networking events and you build a relationship with the people beforehand. It's showing them that you genuinely care about the technology and the idea that you're building on. Some people will just come to hackathons and maybe they're there for the free food. That's a common joke.
I'm just here for the food.
But you've got to show that you're actually invested in the technology, you're invested in your idea, and you truly have a passion for what you're about to present when they see your project. So I call it the Lockbox Method because they did this really, really well at the hackathons, getting to know the judges, getting to know what they were excited about, but also sharing with them why their idea was so important. Because when you get up on stage at a hackathon, you're going to have very, very little time. You're only going to have a couple of minutes to present, sometimes even less. Sometimes you might not even be able to present, right? Because you need to get selected to present. So you've got to make sure that the judges know who you are and that they know you are in this to win it and also to continue building this project into something spectacular. So that's the Lockbox Method. And it's one that I would highly recommend any of you to actually use when you come to a hackathon. Remember, this is about just building something that the judges are going to be excited about as well as you're excited about. So you need to inspire them. And this is a great life tip. If you're ever pitching anything, you need to remember that you're not just pitching this for yourself, right? It's all about the people on the other side who are listening. Just like I'm making this YouTube video as something that's not just for my own enjoyment, but also for yours, right? I'm making this as something that has value to you. And that's what you need to make sure that you also get across to them. So that was the Lockbox Method. Hustle, talk to the judges, and build that relationship beforehand. Number 2 is another method that I call the AA method. The reason I call it the AA method is not because of the roadside assistance, it's because it's named after the 2 initials of people from the team who really use this method really well. And it's to build something that looks impressive. This team have won, I think, about 5 hackathons that we've hosted. They've taken away almost $100,000 and they use this method super, super well. Every time they came to a hackathon, they built something that was tangible. They focused on mobile app, right? So every hackathon, they would show off their idea. For example, maybe it was building a new financial protocol, maybe it was building a new finance app, so fintech, or a DeFi protocol. They would show it working on an app that they had actually built it into, right? I remember there was this one game where they literally demoed it on stage. It was on their phone, they were screen sharing it, and it was so impressive. It just made a massive, massive difference from anybody else who was maybe just building a standard web app. A mobile app is a great way to stand out. I'm not saying this is specific to mobile apps. You can generalize this, but just make sure that it's something that's impressive, right? So if everybody's building mobile apps, then maybe you should do something that's not a mobile app. Maybe you should do something that's a desktop app, right? Or maybe build something that is a hardware related project. I remember another hackathon that we hosted Somebody was actually building something that had software, but it was on something hardware based. So they brought out this massive piece of, I don't even know what it really is. I think it had a couple of motors. So their computer was attached to one end. The thing started spinning. It even had like a flywheel and some sort of propeller. This motor started whizzing. We thought it was going to explode. Anyway, the point is that it made a massive impression on the judges, and it's just something that's memorable, right? If you are pitching and there are going to be 15 people who are pitching at the same time as you, that's a lot of people, and you're going to need to make sure that you stand out amongst the people who are presenting. So remember, the AA method, build something that's going to stand out when the judges come to review it. So those are the two methods that will, to be honest, do 90% of the work. If you follow those two methods, number one, the Lockbox method, talking to the judges, understanding what they're excited about and building around that, and also making sure that your vision really ticks those boxes and you share with them your passion. And number two, the AA method, making sure that you build something that is impressive, that will get you pretty much all the way there. The final three essential tips that I'll share with you are going to be ones that honestly shouldn't come as a surprise to you, but I just want to emphasize them. I'm not going to tell you anything new in these three methods, but they're things that you definitely should not miss, just in case you forget them. And the first one of those three is to come up with your idea before the hackathon. A hackathon is only about 36 hours long, maybe sometimes 48. The point is you do not have a lot of time. I'm going to emphasize that again. 36 hours. Even if you don't sleep, that is literally only 36 hours. If you do sleep, you're down to even less, right? And when you factor in getting food, building a presentation, you don't have much time at all. So do yourself a favor and try and come up with your idea before the actual hackathon. Obviously, if the rules state that you can't start coding beforehand or you can't start making a presentation beforehand, don't do that. I'm not saying that you should cheat. What you should do, and which is totally allowed, is to think about the idea. In fact, every hackathon, judges will love it if you've actually invested the time in figuring out a little bit more about the technology, a little bit more about the idea and the problem statement before you actually come to the hackathon. So let's take an example. Let's say that this hackathon is all about building financial technology apps. So the Monzos of the world, the Revoluts of the world, banking apps. Then take a moment just to think about, what problem am I going to solve? Maybe I want to solve the problem of making it easier for people to invest, right? So young people, they have savings. Maybe they've got $100 or $200. Maybe they've got different currencies, right? Maybe they're students in a foreign country, they're international students. How do you allow them to invest? The cost of one share in a lot of these companies is pretty much like a couple of $100s. So if you only have $100, how are you going to invest in multiple? So maybe an idea around fractionalized shares, and that can be your idea, but a lot of other apps are using that already, so you need to come up with a difference. That's stuff that a lot of teams will spend thinking about at the actual hackathon, and obviously you should brainstorm at the hackathon. I'm not saying don't do that, but just think about a couple of those ideas before you actually get there, so that when you come to it, maybe you're going to decide on the idea within the first hour as opposed to spending the first 10 hours thinking about what idea you're actually going to build. The second tip that isn't really a secret and should, again, be common sense is to start coding as soon as possible. Again, you don't have to code. You can be making a presentation. You could be doing one of the no-code tracks. But if you are coding, please start coding as quickly as you can. There's no point starting to code just a couple of hours before. Obviously, you know that. But just try and use as much as possible. And it just ties back to the first point, right? If you've got your idea, if you've thought about all of that beforehand, that will give you so much more time to actually code. And after all, this is a hackathon, so you're going to be judged based on the code that you output. And the last point that I'm going to make, which is the fifth and final point, but the third of the really simple ones that you probably already know, is don't miss the deadline. There are teams at every hackathon who submit, let's say the deadline is at 12 o'clock, they submit at 12:01, 12:05, sometimes they even submit at like 12:30 and they're like, why wasn't I selected to present? Come on, I worked so hard. The fact is, we're not trying to be harsh if we're judging the hackathon. We want everybody to be able to present, and oftentimes I want to be lenient and I'll just allow the people who submit a couple of minutes late just to be in. But if you're submitting half an hour late, even to be honest, that minute, it just makes it really, really difficult for the judges. We need to be able to take your project at 12:01 and start judging it, because there are a lot to go through, and we need to be fair to the other teams too. So if everybody else submitted their project right on the deadline, probably a couple of minutes before too, then just do yourself a favor and submit it. And as part of this, it's also that, look, taking that extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes or even half an hour probably isn't going to be the difference between winning the hackathon and losing it, or even coming second and third. If you followed the first two methods, remember the Lockbox method of talking to the judges, understanding what they're passionate about, and also number two, building something that's impressive, then the extra like couple of percent isn't really going to make a difference. If you've got one line of code that's not working, just ship it. You're probably not going to be able to fix it in half an hour, or even if you are, that single bug is not going to be the difference between winning and losing. Part of this all is emphasizing that a hackathon is not about building a perfect product. So get yourself out of the mindset when you're at a hackathon that you need to build something that is 100% perfect. That couldn't be further from the truth. As judges, we are not expecting you to build a whole fully functioning startup. If we're following our example of building a fintech app, we know that it takes a lot of time, years to build a great project, and not just one or two people, not just a team of 5 who came together and didn't sleep for a weekend. If it were that easy, we would be seeing a lot more fintech apps and a lot more startups getting built a lot faster. It takes time, it takes expertise, mentorship, trying, failing, raising a lot of money. If you look at any of these big apps, they've raised millions and millions of dollars, and it's not for no reason. At a hackathon, it's just about experimenting with idea, and I always say this. Let's say that there are 10 steps to actually building a brilliant project. Step number 10 might be actually a perfect app that is ready live on the App Store, that is like a unicorn startup. At stage 0, maybe that is just the beginning, it's just an idea. I'd say that in a hackathon, you can legitimately expect to be able to get through like steps 1, 2, and 3. So not even building an MVP, but building some sort of proof of concept, but you're nowhere near step 10, right? So don't worry if you come to the deadline and you still haven't built out your project. Just submit it, and who knows what can happen, right? I've seen a lot of teams who sort of bluffed their way through it. They're like, look, we've got the best project in the world. They scared off some of the other teams, and the other teams who had actually better technical stuff ended up not even submitting. They're like, look, this other team, they're so good. There's no way we're going to be able to compete against them. They didn't even hit the submit button. So make sure you hit that submit button, okay? There would be nothing worse in the world than you spending all that time and you could have pitched or you could have won a prize, but you didn't even hit the submit button. Because at the end of the day, hackathons are about learning. They're about experimenting with new things. They're about trying new things. They're about pitching your project. And who knows, you could become one of those top projects that have come out of our hackathons, like Team Lockbox, who go on to raise. They go on to build these incredible projects. And at the end of the day, start changing the world. So those are my 5 essential tips to winning any hackathon. Honestly, if you apply just the first 2, you will be pretty much on your way to winning the hackathon, as long as you don't forget the 5th and final one, which is to submit your project. Please do submit your project. I honestly can't emphasize that one enough. So many people literally do not even submit their project. Thanks for watching. If you're new to this channel, please do like and subscribe, and also leave a comment to let me know what you found helpful about this video or any future ones that you want me to make. I really do read every single comment. I genuinely mean that. And I'm going to be making my next video based on the comments I receive on this one. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.